Hey guys, this is going to be my in-depth review of the Mini 0806 dash camera. So this is the fourth generation of the Mini cams, and it started with the 0801, then the 03, then the 05, and now this is the most recent one, the 06. I'll tell you right off the bat that this camera is pretty great. It has so many features and accessories in this package with such high specs that I can't help but like it. But it's not perfect either, so I will go over the issues I did have with it. The first thing people will notice about this camera is it has 1296p recording at 30 frames per second. It also has a cinema mode recording at 2560 by 1080, which is a 21 by 9 ratio as opposed to 16 by 9 of regular 1080. It'll also do regular 1080p at 45 frames per second. Besides that, it has high dynamic range, which can provide a better picture at night. Now this package was provided to me by digcams.com, and they sell this specific package for $160, but there's also cheaper bundles that don't come with all of the accessories that this one has, but I think this one is a pretty good value, especially with what is all included. So I'll go over what's included in this package and also what you can get this camera for at cheaper prices. So let's take a look at the camera first. It's pretty small, just a little bullet-sized camera. On the bottom it's got HDMI, a micro SD card slot, and then on the top there's also another micro SD card slot and a micro USB port. On the top there's where the camera mounts to the base. Power button on the side, and with a 1.5 inch screen and 3 face buttons. So I'll give you a walkthrough of the menu. What's funny is this camera has the micro USB port on the top, but the mount also has 2 additional micro USB ports, which I'll show you later. So to get to the menu, you have to stop the recording, then hold the up button for a couple seconds. So the first menu option will be the video resolution, which includes the cinema mode, the 1296p mode, the 1080 at 45 or 30 frames per second, also 720 at 60 or 30 frames per second. So this camera gives you a lot of options for resolution. Video quality is just super fine, fine, or normal. I leave it on super fine. Not even going to bother with the photo resolution or quality because I'm never going to use this to take pictures. There's auto exposure, which you can set it on different spots. Exposure compensation. The white balance. Like I said, this camera has a lot of different options and features. The flicker is for 60 or 50 hertz, or you can just set it to auto, which I left it on. Rotate image. Loop recording is just if you want to change how long each clip is, 1, 3, or 5 minutes, or unlimited. LWS is lane departure warning system. I leave it off because personally I think it's a gimmick, but the purpose of it is to warn you if you're slowly departing from your lane. So if you're falling asleep or something, it'll beep, but typically it beeps far too late. I've noticed when I'm changing lanes it also beeps, so it's sort of pointless to me because it doesn't know when you're actually changing lanes purposely. So there's the motion detection and parking guard, which basically is just a G-sensor parking mode, but this does use a battery, so I personally wouldn't recommend using this for long periods of time while parked. G-sensor, power off delay, I just leave that off because like I said, I don't personally use this for parking mode. Screen off delay, I leave it at the minimum of 15 seconds. GPS stamping, on or off is the option there. Speed stamping, most people don't like to have their speed displayed. By default, it is actually off on this camera. Now, driver number stamping and driver number, I assume that's for if a company is using these cameras for a fleet. A couple other stamps like date and time, language. There's only 2 languages. I don't even know what that second language is. Now, choose card just lets you dictate if you want to use just one of the card slots, or auto, which will use both automatically. Format card, restore defaults, and the firmware. And I did not actually update the firmware on this, but last I saw from mini806.com, this is the most current firmware, at least in the last few weeks. So here you can see when I held down the record button, it actually took a picture. I wouldn't ever use that feature, but it's there if you need it. If you tap it, it records. Now if you hit the down button, it'll actually lock the current file, which is always a feature people like. Now if you hit the top button, it'll actually mute or unmute the audio. So one thing I pointed out in my original video was that when I mounted it into this base mount, it was really hard to get out. But I can say that once you pull it in and out a couple times, it gets a lot easier, and eventually got to the point where I could just with one hand pull it in or out. So that's something I worried about at first, but it did get better. Another thing I pointed out in my original video was that this little screen protector, when I got it, was so hard to pull off that I thought it was actually a manufacturer's defect. I thought that piece of tape was coming out from underneath the plastic. I eventually had to take it off while off camera because I was just pinching and pulling as hard as I could. In the end, I did eventually get it off though. So here you can see the CPL that came with my camera. So like I said, this is one of the pricier bundles, and you can get the camera for cheaper without this edition. But I really do like the fact that the manufacturer actually considered this and released an official one that's magnetic, so it's really easy to put on. You just line up the white line and it'll help reduce glare in your windshield. Now another really popular camera is the Mobius, and I really wanted to show how small this Mini 0806 is. The Mobius is really tiny, and this camera is not much bigger, and it has a screen, so I think it's pretty impressive how small this camera is, especially for how high the specs are for this camera. One thing I also wanted to note is you can actually spin the camera so you can get the perfect angle for your car. Now another thing this camera came with was a hardwiring kit. So it came with a standard Cigar 12-volt adapter, but having a hardwiring kit available is a really great feature. Sometimes cameras will have hardwiring kit options, but they're not always easy to find since dash cameras are still a pretty niche product in the US. So this will actually let you connect it to your fuse box and keep it powered while you're parked, or at the very least it'll free up your 12-volt socket. Now another thing I really liked about this camera is the company actually includes these little mounting plates to adjust the angle in case your window's a slight angle. I thought that was a really thoughtful thing to include. So I wanted to show some footage now. This was actually recorded in 1296p, but this YouTube video is going to be only 1080p because of my video editing program. Either way, even in 1080p it looks great. I will upload these clips separately so you'll be able to see them natively in 1296p. And if the videos have black bars, that's actually the 21:9 cinema mode, like this clip right here. In the cinema mode, it actually records in about 15.7 megabits per second, while the 1296p records slightly lower at about 13.5 megabits per second. Now what I found a little strange was the 1080p in 45 or 30 frames per second records in about 9.2 megabits per second, I would assume that since it's a low resolution, it should be able to record at a higher bit rate, but for whatever reason, that's what all my files have been showing me. One issue I do have with this camera though is the way the camera is mounted on the base seems like it allows it to vibrate a lot. So you can see in this video the camera shakes back and forth quite a bit. I haven't had any dash cameras shake this much. In the end, it doesn't really matter a whole lot because the picture is still great, but it is a little annoying seeing the camera shake back and forth a little bit. This camera seems to do very well in different harsh lighting conditions. Sometimes even with the sun shining directly at it, it does pretty well. Now this shot here does have some clouds blocking the sun, so it's not the harshest condition, but it does still look really great in my opinion. This camera does have a 4 megapixel CMOS sensor, which is pretty high compared to a lot of other dash cameras. And it has a 135 degree angle, which is pretty wide, but in my opinion it's not too wide. I think around 130 or so is okay, but any more than 140 you start to get too much distortion in the picture. If it's too wide, it'll actually make stuff look further away and it'll make license plates a lot harder to read. So 135 degrees seems pretty fair. Now here I'm just in a parking lot, and this is actually with the CPL on. The CPL is the circular polarizing lens. There you can see I took it off, and instantly the reflections in the window will look a lot more clear. So here I put it back on, and if you spin it you can see it'll get clearer or darker. So this can help quite a bit during a really sunny day, but you do have to take it off at night, otherwise it'll be too dark. I just really like the fact that this bundle actually came with one that's magnetic and it fits right onto the lens. So overall, there's a lot about this camera that I really love. The 21:9 ultra wide resolution is great, and so is the 1296p. They're both so clear and so detailed that it really makes me want to upgrade my normal everyday cameras to something with this resolution. Now, I'm not going to be using it for several reasons, which I'll get into it, but a few other things I really liked was the CPL that was included, the lock button, which is always nice because some cameras don't have that, and the other accessories like the hardwiring kit and the angled mounting plates are really thoughtful, I thought. Having 2 micro SD card slots also means you're going to be able to record a lot more footage even while recording at one of the higher resolutions like 1296p or the ultra wide 21:9 cinema mode. But there's a few things I don't like about the camera. There's a few small things that I can get over, like the fact that the power button is on the side, and once in a while I would accidentally hit that while trying to put it on or off the mount. It was really hard to pull in and out at first, but like I said, eventually did get easier. One of the bigger issues is the fact that the camera vibrates, but like I said, the video quality is so good I can get over that. But what I can't get over personally is the fact that this camera does use a battery. So to me, the parking guard or parking mode is sort of pointless because you're going to kill the battery a lot quicker, and this camera would be leaps and bounds better if they included a supercapacitor. But at the same time, I would still highly recommend this camera on certain conditions. If you don't plan on leaving it in your car at all times, then it's a great camera. Now, the operating temperature says it's rated for 32 degrees to 104 degrees. Now, I live in Minnesota, so it usually doesn't get over 100 degrees in the summer, but if you're leaving it in your car and you want to be recording while you're parked, like say you're at the mall, it's going to get a lot hotter than the outside temperature in your car because of the greenhouse effect. Now, do you really want to leave your windows open to leave that? I personally wouldn't want to. I had a dash camera ruined because I left it in my car for about 45 minutes and it was 85 degrees Fahrenheit and the battery got so hot it started leaking battery acid. So not only that, like I said, live in Minnesota, so it's often well below 32 degrees. Sometimes it's in single digits all day and all night for weeks at a time. So if you want to leave this in your car all the time, especially if you live in an area that gets really hot or really cold, it might not be a great camera. But if you want to just put it up when you're driving and take it on or off, and like I said, after a while it gets really easy to pull on and off. It just takes a few seconds. It is a very great camera with very good video quality, and it's very affordable with a lot of great features if you get this bundle, like I was saying earlier. And to me, form factor is one of the most important parts of cameras. One of the reasons why I continue to use my Blackview cameras, which actually have lower video quality than this camera, is because I like the form factor and I like the capacitor and parking mode. But Blackviews definitely aren't for everyone, so you really gotta weigh the pros and cons of every camera to see what suits you. So currently the prices at digcams.com are $159 for this bundle, which includes the hardwiring kit, the circular polarizing lens, the GPS unit, and it also lists a 32 gigabyte memory card, and mine didn't come with that, so that might be a newer addition. Now there is also a $95 or $96 basic bundle which doesn't include those special accessories or a card, but it's still a very good value to me. It's pretty much the same price as one of the wide-angle Mobius cameras, but with higher specs. And personally to me, if we're talking about the stock mounting solutions, this camera is way better than what's included with the Mobius camera, if you get the dashcam bundle. So again, I would highly recommend this camera under those conditions I talked about earlier. I'll post a link down below for the DigCams listing where you can buy either this bundle or the cheaper bundle. If you have any questions, please feel free to comment below. I probably won't actually get rid of this camera. I like to hold on to my cameras for comparison later to other cameras, and I also like to give them to family members or friends so they can use. If you like this video or my other videos, please hit like and subscribe. I'm about to hit 200 subscribers and I really appreciate all the subscribers, so drive safe and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.